Yo, what's good? Big Z here, and today I wanted to share a little songwriting tip with you guys to make everything in your track fit together really well. By the way, comment below what your favorite song is right now. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like there hasn't been that much good music coming out in the past couple weeks, so I'm on the hunt for some new good music. But anyway, let's get into this video. So what you guys just heard is a track that I'm working on right now, and it's a great example how you can make everything in your track fit together really well from a songwriting perspective. And I know I talk a lot about like mixing and production on this channel, but I haven't talked that much about songwriting. And something you should know about songwriting is how to make everything fit together rhythm-wise in your track. And how you do that is you focus on one main thing in your track, like say the chord progression or the bass line, and then you build up everything around that. And I'll show you what I mean with this example. So with this track, I started with the chords and the rhythm of the chords. So I started with these chords right here. So a lot of times in electronic music, you just start adding on so many elements to your track and it all just kind of jumbles together and you end up with a messy track. To avoid that while you're adding new elements in, you want to make sure everything matches the rhythm of that central element in your song. It could be a chord progression like I did here, or it could be a bass line or whatever you choose. But you need a central element to build the rhythm of your track around. So once I had these chords, I knew I wanted to add a bass line. So if you look at this MIDI, I wanted to follow this rhythm loosely with the bass line so it would fit together. What I'm going to do is mute elements and just add them in as I talk about them. So I really started with those main chord sounds there. I didn't have a bass sound or anything yet, and I just had the basic drum sounds down. So this is really what I started with the track. So in order to have the bass line fit the chords, I need to follow the rhythm of the chords. So here are the MIDI of the chords. I knew I at least wanted a bass note in these three notes. And then I can kind of play off this empty space here if I want to do some fills with the bass line and make it more interesting. So if I add in the bass line down here, you can see how the first three notes of every bar fall along exactly with the chord rhythm up here. And that's good for the whole groove of the track when they match exactly like that. But then there's a little pause in between these sections sometimes. Like here, there's a big pause with no chords. So that gave me more room to do some bass fills and add some 16th notes in here. So the original bass line I had actually wasn't fitting that well. It sounded like this. It sounds similar, but not as groovy. But I found out this note right here was sounding really off, because in the chords I have this big quarter note chord at the end of the bar right here, but I had this bass note right here, a 16th note before that, and it just sounded kind of off. So it's just simple adjustments to the rhythm to make it fit better. So all I really did was delete this note, or you could possibly move it over if you wanted to, but I just chose to delete it. And then the chord plays here, and then there's this bass fill afterwards. Another thing that wasn't working is I'd added some groove to these chords. Like if I zoom in here on the 16th notes, you can see they're a little bit off axis. So to make sure they're the exact same groove, you can highlight everything and mess with the swing around here. So I had the swing at 50. So I just made sure to do the exact same thing with my bass line and put the swing at 50. So that's how I ended up with this bass line that fit the chord structure a little bit better. And then I ended up adding in this sub and top bass. playing the exact same bass line as that original bass sound I showed you. Now I wanted to do a vocal chop lead, but I needed to make sure that it fit the rhythm of those chords as well. So here's the vocal chop I ended up with. So you'll notice that every time a chord plays, the vocal chop starts as well. So here are the chords starting right here, and every time a new chord plays, a vocal chop starts at the exact same time. And even with this like quarter note at the end, I have this like vocal fill. That sounds really cool. But it gets boring if you just exactly follow the chords every time. So like I did with the bass line, where there's empty space in between the chords, like you can see in the MIDI right here, there's big empty space where these chords aren't playing. Then you can fill that space in with something interesting from the lead or the bass or something. So that's why I added some extra vocal chops in here when the chords weren't playing. So a really important part of this is not only to make sure all the synths, leads, and basses all fit the same rhythm, but to make sure the drums do too. So when it came time to add like shakers and a hat, I had to make sure it fit the same rhythm. And I really liked this stop that was going on with the instrumental. In between this quarter note and this quarter note, there's this kind of stop when nothing's playing. And I thought that would be a great time to add this like low kick hit. That way it kind of grooves off that stop. But I also wanted to make sure the shakers and hats down here stopped when everything else stopped in the mix. So that's why I've muted these notes right here, these shakers. And the rest of the time the shakers just play freely. But I just wanted to make sure it followed the rhythm of those chords still. So the shaker loop and the hat loop have the same thing. This is the hat loop. So it just stops when those chords and that bass line stop. So lastly, just to fill out the song some more, I was looking for some more empty space where I could add some more instrumentation. So just by looking at the MIDI of the chords here and using it as a guide, I can see that the first quarter note of every bar was seeming empty, and it seemed like a space where I could put something else. So that's why I ended up adding these brass stabs right here. So it seems really obvious just to line up everything on the same rhythm in your track, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that. You got to use the open spaces to create fills with the leads and the bass and find out where you can add some extra percussion and extra fills and stuff. It's really about building off that main element in your track, whether it be the rhythm of the chords or the rhythm of the bass line, and building everything else around that and just using those open spaces to create a more interesting dynamic. So hopefully this video was helpful to some of you. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Spotify below. And other than that, I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.